Good morning, everybody. It is May 15th of 25. Gonna do some journal readings from back in July. Um, this is fascinating because what I do is I watch the session first so I can see which journals I read so I can put it before this. And I realized back at this time, at the time, I thought that because I had so many parts and I had already discovered a part that had done, I think at this time, whipping of another human. I didn't realize that I just assumed that these parts were parts that I already had doing a different job. And I realized, no, this was another split. But at the time, John would always say to me, you know, you go into a situation, that part gets overwhelmed. And then you split and another one comes. So you could have a split every 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, as the situation warrants. And I wasn't able to accept that at that time. I was just coping with what I already had, and it was a lot. And so when I went back and reread this session or watched the session, I realized, oh my goodness, it's what, 9 months? Six, no, almost 11 months after the fact. And I didn't forget about this incident. Thank goodness it's recorded, but it's not, I didn't acknowledge them as parts. And so I went through the session last week, and so I spent a few days processing those parts and got some more details 11 months after the fact. So I can't recommend enough rewatching your sessions, even as much as a year later, because you're at different understandings down the road. You have more of the puzzle pieces down the road. And what you think might be inconsequential back then, you'll understand that no, this was a big deal. And so that's what I'm gonna read. I think I'm gonna read a couple, three kind of cool. Well, they're all kind of short except the last one. So I'll read these and you'll hear this in the session tomorrow as well. I'm sorry it's redundant. So this is from July 19th. I woke up in the middle of the night and remembered that Dad used to be smoking a cigarette or joint and blow the smoke in my crib slash changing table, wherever. And I used to cough really badly. I'm coughing now. This morning I woke up to realize that Dad used to smoke all the time, wherever and whenever he could, be it with a cigarette or marijuana or whatever it was in the bag. He was suffocating me. That was like a consistent factor throughout all of it, and that was a different part called smoke, where my dad would put a bag over my head. I don't know if it was a trash bag or if it was one of those bags that were for people who have cancer and use marijuana to help them with their cancer, their pain, I think is what it helps them with. But you fill up this bag and then you inhale it. Well, my dad used to stick the thing over my head and get the smoke in the bag. And then as I would be breathing it in, I'd be getting high. And the bag was about out here. But eventually, you suck all that air in. He would duct tape the thing around my neck, and I'd be strapped to a chair, and eventually I'd start suffocating. But as I was suffocating, I was stoned. So, yeah, and I think I was 6 at the time. So that's what I'm talking about here. And then there was Jack after that, who smoked like a chimney as well. Now, Jack was my handler, CIA handler. So I'm just sitting here realizing that every single person in my family smoked, even my mom and her sister and her mother and brother and stepfather. Everywhere we went, there was smoking. Excuse me, my covert smoker's cough. Angie, Mary, and Mom all quit smoking around the same time. I think somewhere in my late 20s or early 30s is when they quit, but I continued on. I quit for those 4 years in Dallas, and then I quit for 1 year in California until I met Chris. He smoked, and so I started again. And then I finally quit for 8 years with Chris. It always pissed me off that while I was in the early stages of it, that it never occurred to him, not ever once, to support me and perhaps smoke outside or in the garage. But I managed, and then it didn't even bother me or cross my mind until all this SRA memory stuff came up. And even then, it was early June. So, and it's almost a year now I've been smoking. So I was remembering it for a good 8 or 9 months before I started smoking. And so I was disappointed with myself that I was smoking and trying to think, why am I smoking? Why am I smoking? And John told me, well, you'll hear what John tells me in the session, and it applied to sweets and food as well. Um, and now here's taste. This one I labeled taste. This is July 19th as well. I was just watching one of my TED Talks again, and I was thinking about my belly and being overweight. And then I was also thinking about how I do all that bike riding to counterbalance it so that I'm not an absolute obese mess. Then it suddenly hit me. The reason that I ate all that cake and sweets as a child was to cover up and wash away the nasty taste of blood and human flesh out of my mouth. I was using one thing to wash away another, and in doing so, I wound up basically getting addicted to sugar and wanting to have a dessert every single day. And then when I was smoking pot, that just exponentially increased. So therefore, I had to increase my exercise. But now that my knee has been messed up, I haven't been able to ride my bike. I have not gotten on the scale lately either. And that's funny too. I haven't ridden my bike for almost a year, maybe a few times after this time period, but I haven't ridden my bike and I haven't gained any weight. And I remember it was maybe 6 weeks ago, I weighed myself and I had lost 10 pounds. So that was mind blowing. So I just watched that video. Oh wait, just watching that video made me notice my big old belly and not liking it. So perhaps my next TED Talk, along with whacking the knee, I'll whack the heck out of the lungs so that I can work out smoking. I can also maybe whack the mouth and the stomach so as to work out the issues with the taste in my mouth, which coincides with smoking, and working out the smoking issues by beating on the lungs. Now, I thought about this when I was listening to the session a few days ago. I think I could still be smoking because smoking leaves a taste in your mouth. So, instead of eating sweets and sugar and all that, I'm smoking to cover that up. I have tried a few times to quit, but I'm just not ready. And I want to be ready, but I'm not. So anyway. I never made that connection before either about the nasty taste in my mouth from SRA and also the nasty taste in my mouth from cigarettes, because that also covers up the SRA taste, as well as the sweets and sugars covering up the SRA taste. That's interesting. And I was, excuse me. So we had this delivery of meat. There's a guy that comes around in a van and sells organic meat. Well, I tried 5 of the different steaks over a few weeks, and every single one of them tasted nasty. So when he came back to me, I was telling him about it. It was one of every single variety. And that's why I tried one of every single variety to make sure. He graciously allowed me to exchange it all. I was skeptical. I figured it was all going to taste the same again, but it didn't. The exchanged meat tasted normal. I got to thinking about what my counselor said about reliving, tasting the nasty things that we were made to put in our mouth. I think that I was going through a phase where that was happening, and it just happened to be those steaks. How exchanging them would make a difference, I don't know, but it did. Unless it just happened to coincide with getting through a certain phase of my healing and it didn't taste bad anymore. So yeah, the cigarettes do mask taste and smell. Something to think about. Perhaps on the TED Talk I should work on the mouth and the nose. And I will admit to you all, I did for probably a few TED Talks But then, a new memory comes up, you get distracted by that, work on TED for those guys. And I never went back to banging away at the lungs or the mouth or the taste or all these things I'm talking about here. So I've got to be mindful to do that. Because when you're in the thick of things, it's easy to just go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And the process of doing the emotional checklist sorry, I got hair sticking up, every 2 months reminds me, oh yeah, these guys from 9 months ago still have some anger. And, yeah, the ones that just revealed last week have huge amounts of anger, fear, despair. But I want to, and I'll work those down, but I want to get to the point where I guess I'll just bring this up. Let me share for a minute. It was really fascinating when I went through this the last time. Parts, IFS, emotion levels. Because I could see through the year the parts that revealed first, second, third, fourth, in groups, how very different they are. I've got what, one, two, three, four, five, six tabs now. So this is back in June. And you can see, let me slide this out. Yeah, shoot, I'll move that up. This is all the way over, and these are my parts that revealed from October till June as I'm working with Jon and working on Ted. And you'll see on the left the oranges, reds, and blues for their, high emotion levels. But as you move to the right, let me see if I can make this bigger. They're into peace. They have high levels of peace and happiness. I mean, I know this is going very quickly, but just look at the left and look at the right. These are the first parts here. So this group of parts are mostly in the peace and happiness level. On the far right is their latest um, health checkup. Now we go to the next set of parts, which is labeled August. So June, July, August, 2 months later. Um, Let me pull this out. Yeah, this was April 1st that I did it. So June 1st, I've got to do it again. Oops. And yeah, this is time consuming and it's work, but it's worth it to find out where you're at, where your parts are at. So you see on the left is their original state. And on the right is where they're at now. Lots of peace and happiness, or, you still got some anger. And so I was realizing, wow, I still need to work on these guys here that were from last August. Actually, it was July and August. But generally, their levels of anger and fear and sadness have come down. And they're mostly peaceful and happy. Oops. So the next set of parts, this is October. So this is September and October when these parts revealed. And you'll see I started having parts that were numb, moved into anger, reduced the angers, and now they're peaceful and happy. I'll start at the beginning here. So yeah, October. So we've only got 4 months going, or 8 months going here. You'll see these guys have a lot more, not a lot, but more, some red. So I had to, I realized, wow, I need to get out there and focus on these guys in particular and work out their stuff. But their peace and happiness levels are there. They're rising. Some are all the way up to the top. I make the comments as I go along, what the part wants to record there. So I can look at it later and go, oh, that's what they want to focus on. Okay. And sometimes they'll just say, I want TED work. Don't know what it is, just want some TED work. So there's the next set of parts. So next one is November, December. Again, revealed very early, later on. These are just I guess the younger reveals, this versus the older reveals, you'll see they still have a lot of high anger levels. And over on this right column here, a lot of them have found some peace and happiness, and that's just from being acknowledged, done some TED work, etc. But this is where I started noticing the numb parts. So I had a lot more numb parts. You'll see the gray bar come along. Yeah, there's one right there. Went from numb to furious, now a little bit angry, but generally peaceful and happy. And look at all that red on the left. But they have found some peace and happiness. This one was just terrified. That went away, moved into anger, and totally peaceful and happy now. And this was an incident where I was kicked by a horse. I was afraid of them. I believe by this time here, I had gone to my friend's horse rescue ranch. We house sat for people, and I got to interact with the horses, and she was well versed with horses, and my fear went away, and I was mad that they got me to that state, but because I had gone to that horse ranch and interacted with them, worked out my fear and anxiety, they're totally happy. They want to be around horses now. So, uh, just you'll just see what's going on here. And the last, let me see, December, so this is just 1 month later because I had so many that month. You'll notice a lot more gray parts. I'm noticing the more I go here, the more numb parts I have. And you'll see here if there's nothing there, it's because they didn't reveal till this time period. And so I was going, oh wow, there's a lot more numb parts, parts that are super, see on the left there, all that numb, 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 numb. All that gray. I didn't have that with my first reveals. And I wasn't super conscious of recording numb at that time either, but after a while I became that way. So, and then now here's March. Watch again. The gray bars, lots of numb, 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 numb. Lots of numb parts. So I had to get through the ones that were not so numb at first and work them out, get them to peace and happiness levels so that I could get to these numb parts and they could start working out their stuff. And you'll see, let me find a numb one. There we go. It's not numb anymore. A little bit of angry. I said, oh, I'm just a tool and a zombie. And now this was just stupid robots. I don't want to get into all the details of that, but they'll move from numb or fearful or despair into anger, right? Numb, anger, little peace and happiness. And I would wager probably by this checkup, the anger will be down, peace and happiness will be up. That's just what the TED work does. And this is the last few parts that I've recorded in the past, I think 3 weeks or so. Watch all these numb parts. Numb, fearful, numb, fearful. A little anger, not a little, but anger. Numb, 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 numb. And I just thought that was fascinating that that top layer of parts, for me, the first parts that revealed didn't have so much numbness. They were terrorized, they were angry, they were in despair. They could cry, they could have anxiety, panic attacks, or just lash out and holler at people. But now it's about the numb ones. The numb ones are poking their heads up now. So, and these have not, I've just recorded them. I've done TED work, but it's not 2 more weeks. I'll do another checkup. And yeah, it's going to take me 8 to 10 hours to get through all of them. So, just wanted to share that with you. So let me get off that and get back to the journals. Okay, so this one's real quick, from July 20th. So Chris is still sleeping, and I wanted to get a TED Talk done. It occurred to me that I could just go out there and use the knives. So I did. So I'm not banging, making noise. The knives just. So I did. I took two little ones and just stabbed the thing all over. And then I put some tension on the knee and stabbing it, and the lungs and stabbing it, and the mouth and stabbing it. And I yelled at it without expelling sound. So I just released this gutter roar. This may be 2 or 3 minutes. I couldn't yell, but I hollered with air, and I'm glad I did it. And I forgot all about this too, and the fact that it worked on that day, and I realized, oh my goodness, I can yell without making sound, and you just expel the air. And yeah, you've got a little bit of sound coming, but it's not that top of the lungs screaming. So it's releasing an energy. Yes, the verbalization has to be there as well, but not always. So just wanted to share that too. Okay, close that guy. Now here is my computer will catch up with me. I think these are out of order. Let's see. Yeah, this one's intense. Anyway, this entry is because of gardening and pest control, because by July you've got pests, you got to deal with them. And I was thinking about how that works with my parts. And from previous journal entries, you'll hear me talking about how the beetle in the garden there's a part inside of me that also is what I would call a beetle. It chews away at the base of a plant, a vine or any kind of plant, chews away at the base and then the whole plant dies. The base of it that's near the ground, because that's where the beetles are. They don't necessarily crawl all over the plant. They just go to the stem of the plant, eat around it, and then the whole plant dies. And I thought, well, how does that relate with parts? There's a suicide part, parts that want to hurt yourself, whatever. And so those must be the beetles that maintain the system, or whatever word you want to use for it. For me, my mind files and my maps are very connected to gardens and plants. So anyway, I said, so just get to thinking, so just got to thinking as I'm sitting here having a cigarette smoking, doesn't necessarily have to be one specific part, that it could be one of those mind foul parts or aspects. It popped into my mind that if it were part of the mind fouls, that would be the parts that would want to self-destruct, I suppose, or something like that. And that would be the part that would be eating away at the base. So that part would be the beetle. It's funny because yesterday I looked up the beetle in Wikipedia and what it does. It discusses that it was considered like the sun to ancient peoples. It was revered, and that it has horns. It eats away at the base of plants. That could be the part or aspect of my mind files that has to cut down me, the self-destruct mode, ever so slowly chewing away at the base until the whole plant dies. And because I'm trying to figure out the smoking business. And I was just rereading the Wikipedia on beetles. It has sexual dimorphism, which, Satanists love that transgender male, female in one aspect. So anyway, the scarab was linked to the Khepri, god of the rising sun. Um, Beetles are mentioned as a symbol of the sun in ancient Egypt. Um, and they're used in ingredients and spells. So witchcraft, I wonder if I didn't see beetles used in my grandmother's concoctions that she was teaching me. Um, And the rest you'll hear in the session. It's not a whole lot, but just for some reason at the time I thought that was important. The fact that it's, a sun god, it's revered, and Satanists or, the pagans revere the sun, and, they use it in potions and the sexual dimorphism and all that stuff. So here's the next journal entry, July 22nd. I labeled it adrenal gland. Laying down to go to sleep, and I just saw an image of a woman naked on the floor on her hips, sitting sideways. She was on her hips and elbows. A large ponytail, her ponytail was hanging forward. Long hair. She had just been whipped and thrown down. She was catching herself on the floor. Some time passes that night, and now I see her being hanged. She is still naked. Her legs are flailing around in the air. Her hands are desperately trying to get under the rope that is hanging her. My father and grandfather have me standing between them watching her die. They were explaining to me, that's what happens when you open your mouth. And my dad interjects, but not in the good way. And my grandpa chuckles. She was whipped badly by grandpa and then hanged. She was almost dead and was stopping fighting. My father lifted me up. I had a knife in my hand. He had me plunge it in her solar plexus down through her stomach. I disemboweled her. Graham had a bowl to catch the innards. She was left hanging in the barn overnight and the next day in the heat. I was taken to see her dead body the next day. They patted me on the back and told me what a good job I had done. I was a good little killer. I think I was 4 years old. But they were praising me, and I was so glad to have their approval. I wanted to please them. It just hit me rereading this that I did not kill her, they did. And so as I'm reading this right now, and as I saw it in the session the other day, I realized that this is a cult loyal part. It's trauma bonded. It's a perp apologist. Anyway, that was Catherine's second kill, a human. Sarah's second kill, an adult. And so this is what I was thinking at this time. It never dawned on me that this was a completely different part. Even as a completely separate incident, I couldn't go there at the time. It was too much overload, too much overwhelm, trying to figure out mind files and beetles and all this. So it's very distracted. And so I just put it down to being Catherine and Sarah. Somehow they must have just done it. Well, no, it was a brand new part. And after I read this all, I'll show you the entries I made for it in my map. After the woman was whipped, she had a rope placed around her neck and was raised up in the barn. That's when she was kicking and fighting to get off. A big long wooden arm swung her body around to be over the tub of blood. That room next to where Susan and Lindsay, my parts, were tortured with snakes and lamprey. That's why Dad lifted me up so that I could reach out to her while she was over the tub of blood, or vat of blood. I never knew what to call it. And it was probably 5 feet deep, maybe 6 feet deep, and probably I want to say good 6 to 8 feet in diameter. It's like maybe a silo that was repurposed for this. I remember looking at the place where we were tortured with snakes and lamprey. It sent shivers up my spine. Of course, I would do whatever they told me to do. Grandma had taken some of the entrails and put it together with some of the woman's blood in a blender. She prepared a goblet. Me and her and Dad and Grandpa drank from it. Apparently, that was our prize, our reward. It was so disgusting. But I drank as much as they told me. I could not get that taste out of my mouth. And right now, I want to have a cigarette. On the second day, when they took me to see the body again, is when they lowered it and placed it in a wagon of some sort. The neighbor boys took the body away. And now these are boys that are like 8, 10, 12, 14 years old. I think there was 3 or 4 of them. But 3 of them, because I'm getting that right now. And They were 10 to 14 years old. They were the same boys that tortured me. So more time goes by this night, more memories. So it's morning now. I slept okay last night. I had lots of dreams. I woke up when I turned over having a coughing fit. Sitting out in the garden, just relaxing, I was thinking back on that image that I first saw last night of the woman being thrown down on the ground naked. At first, I thought it was me. I had to really look at her. I realized it could not have been me because she was an adult and she had that long ponytail. That was only when it occurred to me I was watching somebody else tortured slash murdered. So very disturbing. I'm having some stomach cramps over it. I'm pretty sure it's from that mixture of entrails and blood that Grandma made me drink back then. And I keep having the impression that right now, and I was last night, that I had to eat some of that woman's body. And right now, I'm realizing it was the adrenal gland mixed up in the blood. I just, and I'm adding these things in here. I know I did with the innards in the blood. And by innards, I think I'm talking about the adrenal gland. But I keep getting the impression that there was a piece of flesh presented to me and I was to eat it. I did eat it. Kind of like, when a hunter kills an animal and they cut the heart out and they are presented with a piece of the heart to eat. It's just so disgusting. Human beings. I have the goal to ride my bike and do my sit-ups as well and work on TED today, but there are parts of me that are not interested. I haven't been on my bike for almost 3 weeks now because of my knee. Now my knee is 99% better, just the tiniest little sore spot on the side of it. That's why I was thinking I should ride my bike. It just occurred to me that I have regressed in life. I'm smoking again and not exercising. I keep telling myself that this is just a temporary thing, but I have to put my foot down and stop smoking. And I have to get back on my bike again. I want to feel strong and healthy. Yeah, here I am sitting in the garden dictating this and smoking a cigarette. I feel tired and drowsy and my stomach is jacked up. I'm pretty sure that means there's more memories on the way. That always happens when I feel drowsy, but then again, it could be because I didn't sleep as deeply as I could have. So now I have the image of the next time Dad and Grandpa had me disembowel another person. This time they had a stool for me to stand on so that Dad didn't have to hold me up. I was 1 year older. Same thing, they brought someone in naked, threw them on the ground after they whipped them. After I whipped them, discovered that too. And so you'll see how your mind, you can remember a memory and assign things to certain people because at that point in time, the part's not ready to reveal to you, it was me, I did it. But they'll just say, oh, they were whipped. So just realize that over time, you can look at and confront more and more and get more and more details. Threw them to the ground after I whipped them. I should say was made to whip them. Then strung them up and hung them. Watched that person struggle being hanged to death and swing around over the vat to bleed out after I plunged the knife in their solar plexus down to their groin. This time it was a teenage boy. Again, that person was being sacrificed because they exposed secrets. And it's not that it ever went to the level of the police or anything like that. It's that they had somehow betrayed the cult. Grandpa was the head honcho and would make those decisions. Dad was only too happy to present me as the executioner. I put here Catherine would take care of those jobs. Catherine split off from Sarah. Barry split off from Catherine later in my 20s. It had crossed my mind a few weeks ago how Barry knew how to do that in Himmler's castle. Now I understand. Instead of Catherine being in a barn with one person, Barry was in a castle with many. and a large sword for the job. It always blows my mind how the perpetrators down through time know exactly how to access and activate specific killers for specific jobs, or specific sex slave for specific orgies, and how perfectly adept they are at splitting someone into a new trauma. So, coming back further in time when Catherine was born, she had to twist a kitten's head in order to kill it. It was after that that she was taught how to disembowel it. I did not remember that until right now. Angie and Mary were sent upstairs from the basement. Then Grandpa and Dad held a cat and guided my hand from the cat's solar plexus down to its groin, the same way that Grandma had taught Sarah to do it on that baby. They were teaching me how to disembowel it. It was a couple of days later that I disemboweled that woman. And then the following year, that man. I believe the woman was in her 20s, and the man was a teenager, about 17. I remember hearing Grandpa talking to Dad about how he had waited for months and months for us to get there so that he could take care of business, that he wanted me to do it. And the thought of waiting and thinking about it turned him on or energized him in some way, almost as though it was foreplay for him. He masturbated while I killed that woman, and Dad held me up to do it. The following year, he and Dad masturbated while I stood on the platform to do it. It was the same way that they had masturbated while me, Angie, and Mary were being tortured by the snakes and lamprey. It's just so disgusting and depraved. I also just recalled that after those two people were whipped terribly, Grandpa and Dad raped them, and that's when they were thrown to the ground like they were trash. Then they were strung up and swung over, struggling. Then I killed them. I keep feeling shudders go down my spine as I recall it, and my stomach is churning. I keep wondering why they have an obsession with collecting the entrails to chop it up and put it in the blood. The entrails would just have that nasty digestive stuff in it. Perhaps it was adrenochrome that they were after. Oh my goodness, I just realized that. They must have cut out the adrenal gland. I'll have to look up where that's located in the body. So I did, and I've got some images here. I guess I need to share again. Let me do that first. So here's, gosh darn it. Like that, make this bigger. So these are the adrenal glands on top of the what is it? The kidney. And it's funny because fighters in just in the world, knife fighters will go for a kidney, even boxers or just fighters in general go for kidney punches. So it's just right there under the rib, and the adrenal gland sits on top of it. And I always thought that they were cutting this open and pulling out all the intestines and everything, and they did do that, but they were pulling that out of the way so that they could get at this. Maybe the kidney was part of it, I don't know, but they wanted the adrenal glands. Stop share for a second. Okay, go back to this. So, oh my goodness, that's exactly where the knife is placed in the solar plexus. I remember seeing Grandma reach up and pull out a piece of meat. I didn't know what that was. The top part of the kidneys has the adrenal gland. That's why they disembowel, so they have easy access to the adrenal glands. Same thing at Himmler's Castle. After I disemboweled those people, the butcher came behind me and collected the adrenal glands and the blood. I just sent those images of where it's located to my email. I got up to come in the house, and now my knee is just a tiny bit more sore. So I'm remembering more, and now I'm getting more body memories. I said, interesting. It's about 20 minutes later. I just remembered that when Dad lifted me up and swung me onto the platform, he whacked my right knee. I think it was like on the corner of the stair or something. The same knee on the edge of that platform. I remember having to stand up there and do that while my knee was hurting. And then when they sent me back down, I was limping. I just did a TED talk on my GI tract, lungs, and knees. So those are the journals. Me, get a drink while this closes. And at the time, John and I were talking about sweets and sugar and the taste in your mouth and all that. I'll share again. And so I was, oh, darn it, I'm going to move that again. I thought, well, let me look up what the adrenal glands do, you know? When you're in adrenal crisis, symptoms, extreme fatigue. So think about what you've been through as an SRA survivor. You're being terrorized, whatever. So your adrenal gland is pumping and pumping and pumping, right? But now you're remembering having body memories and you're just so tired. I believe that's the memory of the after effects of all the trauma. Yeah, we were tired, worn out, and fatigued, but we had to switch personality and go to school, switch personality, do something else. But now we're feeling the fatigue of it all, right? Or even just remembering those things. You get the adrenaline surge, right? And you can't sleep for a while. So you're sleep deprived, but I think that this is part of where the fatigue comes from. Insomnia, obviously, if your adrenal glands pumping. Trouble coping with stress. So that's a mental issue. Brain fog. I went through brain fog, remembering to craving sweets or salty foods. Digestive problems. Your stomach's all jacked up. Weight gain, muscle and joint pain. So if you guys are going through this, just realize it's from your adrenal gland, from remembering. And it's also body memories from back then that you're feeling now. So don't be so hard on yourself if you have that exhaustion and tiredness. It's perfectly, I don't want to say normal, but it's just a part of what you'll go through. So here is the part that I was just talking about. And first I had to figure out when and where this was in time. So I want to show you, and forgive me, I'm going to have a little bit of cigarette. I had to go through here, and this is where I'll move through it. It's very long. I've got 1,033 parts now, but they're chronological. And if I get it wrong, I will move it and correct it, which is fine. But I thought, well, okay, I'm the part in the journal entry remembered looking over and seeing the place where I was tortured with lamprey and snakes. So, okay, I found those guys. Here's snake, cancel. Here's snake and lamprey. So I knew it was before this. But I had to figure out, well, okay, Sarah had to learn to kill the cat. I should make this bigger. Sarah had to learn to disembowel the cat. And then we have this big long incident. Uh, or no, I'm sorry, excuse me. Sarah had to kill the baby. And then this was the event where uh, uh, Jesus appeared. These highlighted yellow slots are where Jesus appeared and helped me. So if you ever see a yellow slot, that's what that means. Then Catherine was taught to kill a cat with her hands. And here is snake and lamprey. So I knew it had to be between this incident and this incident. And why is this not on here? It was on here yesterday. Oh, we lost power. So it didn't save. Dang it. So I've got to put these back on here. These are the 5 parts. I'm glad I went back and looked at this because... And then I remembered after that incident is when... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me insert those right now. My grandma took me outside to do some witchcraft. So I knew that it was that exactly between here and here that I was 4 years old. I had to figure out the impact and give them new names. But that's what this chart and graph does. As you fill in the slots, one part remembers another. So, okay, it was after that and it was before this, so you can put it in the middle. So that's what this does. Let me save that. I didn't realize I lost that work. I thought it was just on one document. Our power was out for like 4 hours yesterday. Right in the middle of doing this, I was like, oh man. So let me, and these are the parts that revealed. I'll show you these. So the names are Lash, Fearful, and Despair. I was afraid to not do it. I was in despair. This was actually lashing the woman. This was watching my grandpa and grandpa rape her. I was fearful. I didn't want to be raped. A little bit angry that I had to stand there and watch that. This is where I started shutting down when they strung her up and were moving her over the vat of blood. My fear was going away and I was just going numb. Then they're telling me you need to gut it. That was their command with the cat, and they used the same command with the woman. I was like, all of a sudden, that's numb anymore and got fearful. Oh shit, are you kidding me? And I put, what, not me? That's what the part wanted to say. So we get up there, well, and I do it. Grandma takes me out to do witchcraft, and then it's the next morning, and I have to watch them get rid of the body, and I'm completely numb. So that was the progress, the emotional progress of that event there. So here's the part. Her name was Lash. It had the cat nine tails whip. I put it at a -14 because there was demonic presence there in my father, my grandfather, and my grandmother. Lash, woman who betrayed cult until she is good and ripped open. And that's what they told me. I didn't know that until I made this bio. And the part said, yeah, that's what they said. Do it till she's good and ripped open. Because they wanted her on her hands and knees looking at her ripped open, bloody, bleeding back while they raped her. And this is the journal entry that I just read to you. Put that in there. Here's the pictures of the adrenal gland. Put that in there. This is my everything is in this PowerPoint. Everything, every sketch, every journal, every name, everything is here. All the other charts and graphs separated out so I can study it individually. So I put the image and the symptoms. And this was after I did their emotional checklist or their, yeah, emotional, mental, and spiritual check, the body, mind, and spirit, and what each part saw and went through. Here's the next part, red lines on the back. This was seeing whipped woman be raped by dad and grandpa. This was as close of an image as I could get, and the part said, yeah, that's close enough, but just imagine that on the back. And the woman had a ponytail. I just noticed that right now. So I think that's part of why my part picked this image. This is the old image. This is how that part perceived itself, this ugly, awful thing. But now she has chosen a new name and a new way of thinking about herself. And this is Cami. This is Cola. And they choose these images. And I think the descriptor they wanted me to put in the Google image search bar was young women in Europe, in the city, because this happened in the country. So these are images of young European women in the city. And then the next image was watching her being pulled up, and I didn't know it until I found this image. It was a hoist, pulled her up, choked her, and there was a swing arm. You see this bracket here. This would swing over the vat of blood. So this part's name was swing arm. Because remember, I said, get the swing arm, hoist her up, swing her over, see woman hanged on swing arm, and she is moved over the vat of blood. I'll put by Waste. Oops. I didn't know that detail until I looked for the images and made this bio. That's what making the bio does, gives you little details, more details, more details. And then, I'm sorry if this is disturbing. This is a fake picture. It's a makeup artist creating this for a horror movie. And my grandfather said, gut it. That's this part's name. And that's how this part saw itself. This is what it saw and what it saw thought of itself. This ugly, awful, terrible, horrible part. This is what she looks like now, and this is her new name. So this is how Kate thinks of herself. She can still remember this. And this incident was disembowel woman as she hangs over the vat of blood. And so these are the five. Oh, wait, no, one more. And the next morning, when I was numb and had to watch the neighbor boys let down the woman's body, dump it in the wagon, and take her away. And I found this image of a woman, of a wagon with a body that looked gutted to me, and they dragged it off. And this is how she thinks of herself now. This is Kira. And yes, they all have the same first letter because they said, well, Catherine was the first one that had to disembowel. She split into Kate because Kate had to disembowel an adult at 4 years old. So they wanted all their names to start with K. So Kate split from there, and all these other parts were parts of the incident. So we were walking into the barn, I didn't know what was going on. And all of a sudden, I got a lash and I got to whip somebody. You split. you know, and now, okay, now I gotta watch you rape this woman who's torn open. You split, you know, and now oh, geez, Louise, now we're hanging her and swinging her over blood. You split, each one of these things could have been 10 to 15 minutes each, but they're splits. Then when it came to time to disembowel, I already had a part that they had trained previously for this. So that part came up. So okay, but this is way different. It's not a cat on a table in the basement. It's an adult hanging over a vat of blood in the barn. Split. So Catherine split to Kate. And then Kate later on in my 20s, well, actually, no, I think around 9, I was made to do that on stage. Kate split to Boris. And then later on in my 20s, when I had to do it again, Boris split into Barry. And it's funny, and those are their new names. So anyway, that's what this will do for you. Okay, so let me close that. I want to show you all. I hope I didn't lose my work. Pretty sure I had these saved and closed before the power went out. I'm glad I pulled this open because I got to put those guys back in there. Open up now. Okay, now here is where I figure out their impact level. Okay. Okay, here they are. I have two sides to this graph. This left side is the repressed level. The right side is the wounded kids level. And I have their names in these columns on three sides because if you're over here, I can't see the name. I'll just pull this out so that you can see it as a whole. Repressed, wounded kids. This section here is the demonic influence, which I feel is much deeper. It's the wounded kids with a much deeper impact, but they still have the same things. So I'll blow this up again. So what I'll do first is I'll come over here and say, okay, well, Guys, help me figure out, was there demonic influence? And if there was just a presence in the environment, 11, 12. If there was not just in the environment, but now it's coming around me personally, 13, 14. If it is, I said, a personal, physical demonic interaction where it wants to enter me or use me or I'm using it, doing witchcraft, that's a demon personally interacting with me. If I am seeing another person be demonically possessed and doing awful things, 17, 18, and if I am personally what I put here, one-on-one, face-to-face, demonic invitation slash possession. If I have called a demon to me, or if it enters me and possesses me temporarily, 1920. So first I'll figure that out. And they're like, yeah, there wasn't just in the room, it was involved with me. I'm whipping this woman. I'm seeing dad and grandpa rape her. I'm watching her being swung around, and there's just this heavy presence. Now I gotta gut it. Ooh, well, demons like that, and they're interacting with me doing this thing. And then the next day, when the bodies were taken down, put away, there was no demonic interaction. So I do this first to figure out, are you above a 10? Yeah, okay. So we figure that out, figure out, are you 12, 14, 16, 18, or 20? Then I'll pull it over here and do the rest of the qualities. I need to kind of shrink this. So here's the parts. They are this purple line. And I'll blow this up so y'all can see the categories. I've put them up there. This I figure out based on who presented first and second. The first part that presents is the external guard. The second part that presents is the internal guard. The one that presents after that is then the internal horrifying guard, which obviously I did not figure out. So I got to see which one presented third and I do this based on how I remember it in my journal. So who was that? I'm gonna go back over here. So Lash and Swing Arm were first and second. Oh, yeah, because gutting it and that demonic presence. Yeah, that was horrifying. So I know that that's this red section here. And I usually have it smaller as I'm working on it. So it's this line here. So this guard, what I call the keymaster, is the one that usually has the highest, not always, but has the highest fear factor, horrifying levels. Okay, so I got the guards figured out. I got the demonic presence figured out. Now we will go back and figure out the rest. Shoot. Gotta make it smaller. Okay. So the categories are, and it's this purple category we're working on. The parts had spiritual guilt the whole time they were in the barn. The next morning, I didn't feel that way. The part didn't feel that way. Did they blame themselves? No, we weren't doing it. We were following orders, which comes to the next category, following orders. Everybody was following orders. Were we trauma bonded, loyal, and protective of the Perk Stockholm syndrome? Not really. I wasn't being coddled or hugged or told, good job, all that. So no, trauma bonding didn't happen there. We were just executing a job. Was I obedient, submissive, mechanical, and numb? Sometimes this and the following order kind of blurs together, but yeah, I did what they told me to do. Period. was this publicly functional, socially appropriate? Obviously not. But sometimes I get confused with this category. In that environment, it was socially appropriate. But is it socially appropriate out in the world? And so for me, this category means out in the world. If the rest of the world saw this, would this be appropriate? No. Takes and compartmentalize current pain and body memories. All of them did. All of it hurt. Whipping. My body and arm felt that. Um, Standing back watching them rape her, my arm was hurting. Watching her get swung over, I remember my arm was hurting. And as dad lifted me up and I was to gut her, he whacked my knee. So I had to compartmentalize that pain. And the next day, my knee still hurt. I didn't know why, but it hurt. Betrayal, borderline personality disorder. Did they betray me? In the general scheme of things, yes, because you don't do that to your children, but that part was created in that moment to execute a function. So was it betrayed? No. I hate you, don't leave me. That's the kind of the borderline personality. I hate you, don't leave me. That was not going on. Was it a sexualized part? No. Was it a backup part? Which actually, I'm just realizing right now that yes, gut was a backup for Kate, is a backup for Catherine. See, I'm just now getting a clue what these backups are. So she's a backup, and I think what I'm going to do is put the part she's a backup for. Because Catherine turned into Kate. Help us young child part secondary backup and substitute comforter. No. Because that would have to come afterwards in time. So no, I would think that Boris is the secondary backup to Catherine. And Boris is later on down the road. So I need to make a note because I'm just now cluing in. I was never very good with figuring out this backup business till right now. I'm starting to get it back up. I thought it was the backup in time in the same incident, but no, in a single incident, a part will wake up, be activated from 2 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever, and have a new environment or a slightly different variation of the same task, split and back up and help that original part from all those years ago. So it's a year, and I'm just now figuring this out. So, okay. So Boris is the backup for Catherine, and he's later, and I'll do that later. Child part wants to get help and stop the abuse. None of them were really there. And then you get into the internal guard, horrifying final defense weapon. I would call this, no, this is the internal guard, not the keymaster. So that's how I figure out their intensity. Because if they related to these qualities over here, and I'll show them to you in a moment, that are repressed. You'll see here I have repressed and wounded parts on this tab down here. If they related with these qualities, here's the 5 parts. Was there confusion? Was there self-sabotage? Was I channeling anger? Yeah, you always have to keep the secret. Was there persecutorial? Was it a workaholic? Was we robotic? Soldier slayer? I guess that could maybe apply. Was I desperate for connection? Was there seductive control? Did I blame myself? Was I protective, resistant? None of these really applied, and so you'll see that's why this single squiggle mark is here. I used to make it a triple squiggle, but I realized visually that was just really too much. Gosh darn it. There it is. So I need to copy and make them single squiggles because it's just easier on the eyes. Okay. So you'll see in this particular incident, I had one part that was in this particular incident, this blue incident here, one part was at under a 10. So these qualities applied to her. But the other two parts in that incident, no, they were 10s and above, so they go over here. So that's how this works. And doing this process, I've realized repressed and wounded parts interact with and work with each other. They tend to have the same incident. And I've noticed that the support team, here's the other tab here. I'll pull this out. Same thing, you've got your support team here. These are the positive above zeros. And these are the 1 to 3s over here. And they tend to work together, but repressed and wounded are, it's above 0, 1, and 2. Repressed for me is 3 to or yeah, subconscious is no, 1, 2. Repressed is 7 to 10. Yeah, repressed is 7 to 10, and wounded kids is no, I'm so wrong. Repressed is 3 to 6 because it's pushed down, and then wounded kids are 7 to 20, and the 10 to 20 just means demonic involvement. So that's what this helps me figure out. And sometimes as I'm doing a part and I think it was just tortured or had to do bad things, I'll come to this part here. It says it was a performing sexualized amoral part. And the part will go, well, yeah, check that off. And you go, really? You were raped or what happened there? And they'll tell me at this point in time when I'm doing this chart, not in the memory, not in the journal, not in the timeline, but right here, they'll tell me. I'm like, okay, so I got to go back and fix the other forms and add that to the bio that this part was raped or, somehow performing sexually. So that's what this form does. So I just gave myself a whole lot of work here figuring out these backups, which I don't imagine that you can truly figure out until you have a bulk of your timeline figured out. Because there might be 2 or 3 parts between Catherine. Oh, there's Catherine and then there's Kate, the ones who had to disembowel. I know there was another one, Boris, at say 7 to 10 years old. And then between 10 and 22, there's another. So, if there's somebody between Kate and Boris, the backups are that way. Anyway, so we'll close that. You've seen the emotional chart. Now, um, actually, you'll forgive me a second and this is how I work it, emotional intensity, because I lost that on my first form. I'm going to copy this, go back to that first form where it's missing, right there, those 5 slots. I'm going to put it in there. So this is where I start. I figure out where are they in the timeline? Are you before or after? And then I take this, copy and paste it onto the other forms. So you just happen to see it in the reverse. Let me save that because it didn't save. And then I'll put them in my alphabetical list so I can see how many parts I have. 1,038. Wow. I talked to a survivor that they have 1,500 parts. So if you're giving yourself a boundary limit, okay, I have 30. Okay, I have 5. Okay, I can go to 100. Don't limit yourself. It is what it is. And yeah, you got 1,000 parts. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it because I know every single incident going on. I know how they feel. I know what their psychological makeup is, etc. So now we'll go to, let me close this guy out. This is the checklist, the health checklist. And this begins, I'll blow this up, with existence. I copy and paste this section and I'll say, oh shoot, I got to show you the categories. Do they have a part name with a picture? Which this is really huge. I gotta do this. Are they on the PowerPoint cover sheet? And do they have a bio? Did I put them on the timeline? Did I figure out their intensity? Did I do their emotion levels? And did I put their journal entries in? These are all the things I have to remember to put in the PowerPoint. I consider all this work simply giving them existence. So now I need to find Kate again. I just had to remember there's Kate. So I do a find, go to Kate. Okay. So all the how now have existence. They exist to me and they exist on paper. They're real. I can talk to someone and show them. If my sisters don't believe my story because they're amnesic, I can say, look, here's the progression of my life. How do you think your life went? Right? The next tab is giving them a new life. Okay, I'm taking out their age and I'm taking out their emotional impact because that's irrelevant now. They're going to grow. Their emotional impact's going to go from -18, hopefully, to a zero or above, and they're going to be peaceful and happy. So that's irrelevant. Yes, the existence is their original state, but their new life is giving them a new life. We're going to let go of how old you are. We're going to let go of your emotional impact. And now we're going to focus on giving you a new life. You have a new name, a new picture. Have we changed your clothes? Because I don't want a little sex slave running around with just a G-string on in my subconscious world. I want her to be clothed. And have I given them a tour of the house? When I get to this part, this chase, I stop, I save everything, I take a break, and I give them a tour of the house. I look out the front window. This is the front yard. We live in the desert. That's my car. That's my husband's car. There's our pickup, you know. And then I'll walk through each room. Sometimes they want to open cupboards and cabinets, and I do, so they can see there's nothing hiding in there. Sometimes they don't want to open them. Sometimes the other parts inside said, hey, we know, we've seen it. She's opened this up 50 times for us. Real, there's nothing in there. Sometimes the new parts, I don't care. I want to look myself, right? So I take the time and do it. It might take 10 or 15 minutes, but all five of these will go with me and tour the house. I'll explain, here's the office. This is my half of the office. That's my husband's half of the office. This is my bedroom. This is where Chris sleeps because we both have PTSD and we don't want to disturb each other at night. So we sleep in separate rooms. I show them the grow room. I show them the garage. Here's Ted. We usually take a few punches while I show them Ted. I'll take them outside and we'll walk around the house. They'll see that the gate is locked, that this has a cement wall on one side, it's wooden on the other. They want to look in the sheds, etc. A tour. And then when I walk the dog or go driving to the store, I'll say, okay, new parts, come on board, look through my eyes. This is what our neighborhood looks like when I walk there. This is what the town looks like when I'm driving through town. Then we destroy their prison. And I just sit here and I say, okay, guys, you're co-conscious with me. You're here now. You're going to live in my house with me. If you're not present right here with me right now in this second, looking through my eyes, you're going to be just at the subconscious level, just below my consciousness. You can get my attention. I can get your attention, etc. What do you want to do with your old prison? So this would be the barn that they were all in. And because they were all in the same environment, they can work together, they can work individually. You see, these ones all worked individually. These guys said, yeah, we'll work together. So now I'm getting cooperation with this group of five. Yeah, we'll work together. The other parts said they did their stuff. So first they wanted to slam snakes into Dad, Grandma, and Grandpa's heads. Hammer and a stake through the center of their head, dead. The perpetrator's dead. So they want to burn it all to the ground. So how do you want to do it? With the flamethrowers. So I visualize these five girl parts just burning the snot out of this barn, everything, until it's ashes on the ground. And they say, ooh, we want to blow that vat up, that vat of blood. So we dropped a, I think we dropped a grenade in there. Yeah, blow up that with grenade. Okay, so the barn's burning, the vat's blowing up, the blood's flowing down, everything's burning down to the ground until it's ash. And then I'll say, okay, do you want to leave a scar on the ground to remember so we can remember that that happened? Or would you like God to heal the land? Some parts want to leave the scar there. Say, I don't want to hide this. I don't need to cover it up. It's not a cover up, but they just say, yeah, the world needs to know that there are scars. And this is the scar. And some parts say, these parts wanted to heal the land. So God took that burnt and pulled all that down to hell. And as he did, he closed the land up and filled it with just farmland. You know, this happened to be the same location where Tripp had his wheat field. And he's, yeah, the wheat field's great. And the lake. So this is a part of that area. So their prison's destroyed. When they look back on it now, they'll see a wheat field. They know they don't have to ever go back there, live there. They're not confined there. And they now live in Lake City or are present with me here and now. Next step is I'll put them on my baptism and new purpose list. Are they baptized yet? No. Do they have a new purpose? Not yet. But if some of them think of it, this I generally do at night before I say my prayers and read my Bible. Well, I'll take 15, 20 minutes, baptize some parts in my head. I'll pull this out and you'll see, I'll put the, I used to just say yes, 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 little X. But now they say, no, we want the date. And some of them, this means that we had more memory. During the baptism, they were telling me more details. So I record that. And some of them say, well, now that I'm baptized, I'd like to focus on, I want this to be my purpose. So here's their purpose. And if we remember more, I'll jot it over here. And this is the one part that my parts say, we don't want to discuss this on the air because it's private. It's between us and Jesus. And I'm showing you, not reading it or telling you how they came to that understanding, but um I guess this shouldn't be all highlighted. But I gotta fix this now. Sorry, because I'm anal. White. And this one's dark purple, white. So I need to make this dark purple. And this was blue. Gets that blue. Yeah. Okay. So baptism and new purpose, which really I should put over here because it's done absolutely last. So sorry, I'm messing with you. So that's baptism and new purpose. Okay, so we got the existence, new life, body issues, mental issues, spiritual issues. And after that, this is like their final piece of healing is baptism, new person. So body issues, here they are, the five of them. Copy and paste without the age, without their impact. That's recorded in their existence, but nowhere else. Well, the PowerPoint, yeah. So we'll just say eyes, ears, nose, mouth. And here I discovered that this one part where I was watching my dad and my grandpa rape the girl or the boy, that I had backed up and my butt was again. I was trying to not get away, but I was just backing away from it because of all the demonic crap going on. It was making me nervous. And I backed up into a hay bale and I couldn't go any further. And this part told me that right here on this form, my butt hit the hay bale and it startled me. And I had to just stand there. I couldn't back up. I didn't even know I was backing up, but this part told me. You know, the swing arm. Again, my I was at the hay bale, and this part told me, well, that's where Grandpa came, put his hand on our back, and pushed us forward. And this part, I knew that I had whacked my knee and that it hurt, and that, part saying my hands and my arms were sore from the whipping, and gutting it because I had to whip so much. By the time I got to the disembowel, my arm was sore, and my arm was sore. My knee was sore the next day, but I had compartmentalized the arm thing by the next day. But my hand was sore. So this is what I learned here, and I'll blow this up so you can see the different categories. I realized here the smell. I said, "What's the smell? Urine." The woman and the man urinated on themselves while I was whipping them, or there was the smell of shit in the barn from the animals. Here is when my grandmother, after we gutted it, she made us have to drink that concoction she made, and I heard the blender blending it up. The part that had to got the people blood squirted on my face. I didn't know that until I did this form. Arms, hands, fingers, butt, back, knees, and that was it. These are the sexual parts. Oh, look at that. I forgot to move their names over here. And that's why I put their names on both sides so that I can see it when I'm over here. So that's what that does. And then you go to the mental issues. And now these aren't set in stone. I think the mental and spiritual kind of interact and play off each other, but this is just how I separated it out. You guys could do it a completely different way. So here's the parts. Did they have mind files installed? Were there symbols? Cards, spinning, earphones, holographs or movies, electrocution, drowning, sensory deprivation, sleep deprivation, upside down or hanging, life-size roulette wheel spinning. Was there concentration issues? These parts just had exertion from the whipping and the cutting. Were we embarrassed, humiliated, degraded? No. Was there mental suspension, distortion from drugs? Were we disoriented, sometimes from drugs, just sometimes from splitting? Hunger, temperature extreme. Were there pictures being taken? Were tables and checkerboard floor, windows, doors, animals? So these are the mental checks and these 5 parts only had 2 that had exertion. Excuse my phone here. Um, Now spiritual issues. Okay. Were there trigger words and phrases used? 3 of the 2 parts said yes. And it's generally always what the purpose saying to you becomes a trigger word or phrase, or they're reusing one. Like my grandfather, when he taught me to disembowel the cat, he said, you gut it. You're gutting it, you gut it, you gut it. That's why this part is called gut it. Because I had to do it again, and that was the trigger word, gut it. Rules, obligations, ordinances. I think 99% of my parts have this checked off because you either have to follow a rule, you're obligated to keep your mouth shut, or there's some sort of thing where you got to be quiet. Can't talk about it, keep it a secret, etc. This is almost always checked off. Did these parts feel abandoned or betrayed by God? These parts told me we don't think that God abandoned us. We feel like we abandoned him. So it can go both ways. Or some parts will describe it as, well, I don't know if he abandoned us, but I know he certainly wasn't there. It was filled with demons, feeling abandoned or betrayed by God. Or actually, these parts, it wasn't abandoned by God. They felt like they were betraying God because they were doing these evil things. Were there curses involved? Was it holidays? Was there communion or baptism? Distortion of verse or theology? I think on this one, what did the part tell me? I take my phone and as I'm filling out this checklist, I'll dictate it into my phone. Let me see what this one said. So is this one this is Kate. Grandma said an incantation while blending and also a prayer of some kind while we were drinking it. And they put trigger words obligation, feeling as though I betrayed God. Okay, so that's this part. That distortion of versus theology. I think she was using biblical phrases and doing her stuff. And this one knew that as soon as those bodies were carted away the next morning, that grandma was going to teach me some witchcraft. So I wanted to get the hell out of there and go do the witchcraft. So this part has a compulsion for witchcraft. Holiday. So you've got music, songs, and chanting. Ooh, which I forgot I should have put there. Um, holiday music. So you've got holiday songs and holidays, and then compulsion for what covenants, promises you've made, doctrines you've been taught. Was there any marriages? Were there rings involved, crowns? And there's blank spaces for you to put whatever went on in your life here. So, and then again, after time goes on, it could be weeks or months, then I'll sit down with my list of parts, 1033, 38, and say, does anybody want to be baptized tonight? And I'll just kind of be drawn to a certain page, and I'll say any, and they'll say, yeah, me, and I'll do them. And I've got about 900 to go because I just started focusing on this a month ago. And my goal is to try to do 5 per day. Sometimes I'll do one or two, sometimes I'll do 10. And I've discovered sometimes when I take a bath and relax, I'll take my list in there and I might do 1 or 5 of them in the tub and actually dunk myself in water. So that's the last stage, is the baptisms and purpose. So that's just that's those parts going through that process. So I think that's it for today. I guess I know I've showed y'all that process many times, but I wanted to just go over it again and again and again. Each one, as you sit down and ask those parts questions, you're asking yourself. But because you've spent all that time making a cover sheet, a bio page, you're trying to figure out their impact level and how old they are. And, even if sometimes you have to guess, by the time you get to the body and the mind and the spirit, so many more details fill out. Sometimes you have to go back and add it to the other stuff because you didn't know it 2 hours ago when you were working on it. So it's a back and forth process, but it's all encompassing. So I guess that's it for today. I will let you go. I wish you well. Dear Lord Jesus, please help all of us here, all of you watching these videos, and everyone who's healing from SRA, MK Ultra, or any trauma. Father, please be present with them, comfort them, buffer their memories so that they're not traumatized again in remembering it. Give each person exactly what they need when they need it. Give them the focus and the stamina to sit down and do the work. Turn off the TV, turn off the radio, stop running and going shopping or whatever. Just put the work in. Spend 2, 4, 6, 8 hours in a day. Because, anyway, help people get their focus and concentration on this so they're not in therapy for 20, 30, 40 years. They might be in therapy for 1 or 2. And their recall is there and it's clear, and they get cooperation from their parts and they start to understand and realize what their life is. Dear Lord Jesus, please surround all of us with impenetrable shields. Surround us, our godly loved ones, our homes, our pets, our properties, our electronics, our data, our vehicles, our travels, our destinations, and our workplaces. Surround us with impenetrable shields of your love, with your holy angels standing guard. Please send your warrior angels in times of spiritual warfare. Father, please bind all the powers, principalities, spiritual wickedness, and dark forces in all places on all planes of existence from us, our godly loved ones, our homes, our pets, our properties, our electronics, our data, our vehicles, our travels, our destinations, and our workplaces. bind the evil from us, and block all astral projection to us. Dear Lord Jesus, love us, be present with us, increase our knowledge, our wisdom, our understanding, and our discernment. And Father, help us to see you more, hear you more, feel you more, cling to you more, be present, ever so present all day long, every day with us. Guide us, cleanse our thoughts, guide our walk, and give us the courage and strength to speak your word, be it just to our parts or to the world, but to speak the truth. And God bless all of you out there that have come along with me on this journey. I love all of you. Thank you so much. In Jesus' name, amen. Y'all have a great week, and I'll see you next time. Bye.